Welcome to the Gsmc Business News Podcast, the show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. If you're looking for a podcast to keep you informed and ahead of the game in business, the Gsmc Business News Podcast has you covered.
Thank you for tuning in to the Gsmc Business News Podcast, brought to you by the Gsmc Podcast Network. It's your girl again. I'm your host, Moriah, and today we're going to be talking specifically about startups. So I'm sure if you've been paying attention to the past couple of episodes, I would say about the last 6 or 7, in each episode, I give a breakdown of how to start a specific kind of business. So whether that be a fashion apparel business, or if that is a restaurant or a pop-up restaurant that you might be trying to get started, a residential real estate business that you might be trying to get started. We've discussed a few different types of brands of business that you can get into. So today I wanted to specifically talk about the actual startup industry. There is a specific industry that a lot of times investors, some bank loan packages that you can receive, different institutions and things like that specifically help startup businesses. There are some websites you can go to put your startup business out there in the air and see if people would like to invest. There's some crowdsourcing that can be done to get startups going. If you're anything like myself, outside of hosting this wonderful podcast and some other things that I do in my day-to-day, I help startups. So I specifically, I'm not even really on a hunt right now for entrepreneurs. They're kind of falling into my lap as I'm going, which is pretty cool. What we do is, just briefly, I would have basically a meeting, like a one-on-one with you and your brand, or we can go by email. A lot of individuals are trying to play it safe, especially with COVID. I do have a co-share office space in my downtown, in my city, where me and some individuals can meet up. We game plan, we talk about budgets. A lot of the startups that I work with have a very limited budget because they are starting up. And, normally you tend to flock to who you are or who represents you in certain ways. So a lot of women, a lot of LGBT reach out to me, a lot of black people of color. That's normally my target, but I'm open to everyone, right? So because the startup space is so huge and it's now global, it's not just a U.S. thing. I know we in the U.S., we tend to feel like we are the world at times, and that goes for anyone, no matter where you are, where you're at. Defines how you move, what you do, how you think, how you feel. So I totally get it. But I do like to touch on many broad businesses. I like to deal with a lot of different kind of businesses because it's just fun for me. I have a blast helping startups. Even if I can't take you all the way to, the different rounds in investing, if I was able to at least get your logo, your corporation, legalized, and you have a business structure, you have your systems in place, your website is running. So if I take my hands off of your startup, you then don't have to jump in and do the little details that I was doing. You can hire out for that. And you can continue your business operations while you may have an assistant or an employee who can handle the rest of that. So that's normally what I do in the startup space. There are many types of different things that you can get involved in with the startup space, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're like me, this is going to be an interesting episode. I just find startups fun, and I wanted to just share a little background so that you understand where I'm coming from, why I'm so excited. This is literally my niche. This is what I do. I love helping the beginners out. I think the beginners need the most help because they don't have the most money. Not all of them. At least in my experience, a lot of startups do not come with the funding that some would say is needed to really get a brand going quickly. So one thing that we'll be discussing today is the history of the startups, how that even kind of came about, like the model of it, and again, getting into investors and what might be needed to get the startup going. I normally give my tips on different startups and how you can start the business and what you need and who you need to look into. But today we're just going to fine tune that, those steps and just get a little bit more detailed since we are talking about a somewhat broad, a broad kind of niche of startup. Again, startups cover everything. If you can think of any product right now, if you close your eyes and think of the first product that comes to your mind, that started as a startup. That brand was a startup brand, and they had to begin, or like we like to say, started from the bottom, and they had to build and they had to work up, and it didn't come with money in the beginning. One thing that you definitely want to keep in mind is that money comes later. So a lot of businesses fail in the first year, and a lot of businesses don't make profit in the first year. So they might not be failing, but profit is not seen just yet. So chances are you're not going to see too much, you're not going to be able to pay off your debt year one, or you're not going to be able to send your kids to school year one. But depending on the startup, depending on the investor, depending on how you go about handling business, and depending on the product that you create, will determine how your projection, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I always have to give my tips, and we're going to talk about some successful kinds of startups that you might be interested in, or that you might be interested in investing in. Just because you don't start up a brand doesn't mean you can't be involved with business operations. We love the stock market around here. I'm a big fan of the stock market. I believe that's one of the greatest ways to build wealth outside of real estate. So we'll definitely be talking about that. And of course, I have to get into my hometown heroes. I think I have a pretty good list today. So, all right, let's just get started. Let's hop right in. What is a startup? So when an entrepreneur is launching a business project or looking to develop, looking to find growth, looking for some type of scalable model, we know them as entrepreneurs. We know that as entrepreneurship. If you go to any of my social media pages, you'll see me say that I'm an entrepreneur or a serial entrepreneur, or that I love entrepreneurship. And that's very broad, right? So if you've noticed in the past, I would say in the past few years, everyone is kind of hopping on this entrepreneurship wave. And to those of us who are already in entrepreneurship, it's kind of difficult not to be, I don't want to say upset, but just to be a little jaded, because we understand that this is not easy. Entrepreneurship, I wouldn't recommend it to someone who does not like to work. If you don't have a work gene, like if you don't get up in the morning and think, what can I do today to be productive? Entrepreneurship might not be for you, right? This is something that's a day in and day out job. For example, I'm helping a new startup, and I'm really excited about it. It's called the Love Styles Collection. It's a unique clothing boutique, started by two sisters in Philadelphia. And I'm getting started with that. And last night I was up until the wee hours in the morning, and I always wake up early. I can't help it. So I've been up for a few hours now. I normally start my day around 5:30, close to 6. So it's one of those things, and I absolutely love it. It was almost like I didn't want to go to sleep because I knew I could just do a little bit more, right? And that's kind of what this startup thing is all about. You want it to work. So you are willing to put in the work and willing to put in the time. And that's really what the startup thing is all about. You can't not like hard work, because this is difficult. I like to compare it. I used to have a little thing for music, had a little stint in it, tried to do my thing when I was younger. And that was also one of those things where you just woke up and you just had to write something, or you had to connect with another artist, or you had to figure out something else that can be done to get production moving. to get things growing, to get things scalable, right? So the same with the entertainment industry. When you first start off as an artist, you don't want to stay just a songwriter or just a singer. You want to eventually grow and scale. And that's what business startups are all about, right? It's about seeing how to go beyond, become bigger, and have founders and employees. And you should eventually want to go public if you're looking to scale. And you should eventually want to get the best investors. You want to eventually get your marketing to the point where everyone knows it, like the theme song of McDonald's, right? You don't even have to hear the music. We just automatically think McDonald's, and you think ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it, right? That's where you want your business to grow. So in the startup phase, these should all be, I would say, almost like predictions. You should be predicting your future. How do you think this brand will go? Have you done your research based off of other startups? How have they started theirs? How have they got business rolling? Business operations, how are they doing it, right? Some startups they start off worth $1 billion. So again, if you've been listening to the episodes, which I'm sure you have, and if you haven't, let's go back and, check it out. They are, some of these startups are already being handled by bigger brands. So you had something like Disney Plus. Disney has been a brand for how long, right? And Disney Plus was a way for Disney to stay relevant. Children aren't really going to watch TV anymore. Normally in my house, the TV plays as like filler music for the puppies. They love TV, especially my pet. He likes to watch TV. And the little one, the Yorkie, he likes to hear the TV. If the Fresh Prince comes on or Martin comes on, those are my those are my go-to shows, my wife's go-to shows. So we might have those playing in the background. It's kind of like filler. Even when our nieces and nephews come over, they're not really watching the TV. They might have it on, but they're scrolling. But those different kind of apps where they can specifically pick a show that they're in the mood for right then and there, like YouTube, for example, those work better. So Disney figured out a way to break into the market and have almost an extension of themselves, but I would call it a new startup. Disney Plus is very new. An old concept, but new to Disney and to Disney fans at the time, especially at the time when it first dropped. So that's an example of a startup that is already touching, revenue. They have subscription business structure. And so your business structure, either you could be selling products, you can have a subscription, you can do a monthly subscription, you can do a yearly subscription, things of that nature. So that's what all goes into the startups, right? So you have some startups that start off with $0, or they're self-funded, or aka bootstrapped as we know it, or they are already an established brand who's creating a new brand. So that, of course, that startup is going to have some good investment money already, right? Because they're already flipping their money. So a startup should offer an idea, image, or vision of the product, its characterizations, especially when you're looking to get investors. You want to give that. You want to figure out how to get customers and how to deal with customers, suppliers, distribution, finances. You want to understand the right business model. You want to understand, the beginnings of startups. So back in the day, when General Electric was getting started, I would consider that one of the first startups in our history. It had to face a lot of challenges, and a lot of car companies at the time where they were coming out they weren't the biggest brands that people were rallying around. When people introduced the idea that you can fill up a car with gasoline and it'll drive, if you put a key in it and press the gas, it'll go and you can drive it around to different cities. People were like, man, whatever. We have horses. What do we need cars for? Cars are not going to last long. Cars are just for the rich, fancy people who want to show off. Horses get the job done. And now, if you see, we have electric cars coming out. So, shout out to whoever truly invested in those brands in the beginning. I know their family is eating very, very well because of it. Because a lot of people didn't believe in the startups. Startups are that. It's almost like with the history of entrepreneurship, how entrepreneurs started off in the music entertainment, I would say, the theater. So you would have these artists who would create these ideas, and they would go to rich investors and see if they wanted to invest in this play or this musical. And it was to the point where, okay, we have plays and musicals already. What makes this one different? And that's the key in startup land. What are you doing that's different, that's innovative, and that's going to really give something new? It's going to birth a new movement in business. That's really what the startup phase is all about. Again, it got started back in the day. You had your car companies, you had your planes, you had transportation, trolleys and trains and things of that nature were getting built. And everyone's kind of like, man, we can just stick with horses. We can stick with mules. We don't need a lawnmower. We can do it ourselves. Startups bring ease and they bring convenience, in my mind. That's how I like to think of the startup. They bring the comfort. They bring the ease. They bring different. Even back in the day in the Silicon Valley, when things were really getting started, it was like a buzz and new intellectual, just opportunities were happening. A lot of people didn't believe in computers. And who would have thought a computer as big as the wall, because that's how they used to be, would be able to fit into your hand, right? That's innovation. Cell phones. That started off as a startup too. So you just want to look around you and just see a lot of the different things that you might have in your house. You might remember when things first came out. It's something different, something new. I'm always a fan of the tech startups. I think those are the most long-lasting startups. But then you have your clothing, and then you have your people who make different type of no-slip bottles for condiments. There are mayonnaise and ketchup bottles that have a no-slip cap. That cap was started by someone. That was a startup brand, and now they sell to many different brands who want to also implement the no-slip caps, so that when you pour something, it doesn't slip all over the bottle. These are different ways that entrepreneurs become innovative and create something that's long lasting. And that's really what the startup is all about. That's how it gets started. You're looking to create something different, something new, innovative that will affect generations to come. That should at least be the goal, right? So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to get into the different kinds of startups that seem to be most successful, especially now that we're in a pandemic. A lot of brands are trying different things, and some are proving successful, some aren't. So when we come back, we're going to get into that. And then we'll get into, some specific steps on how you can do your startup, and then our hometown heroes. So stay locked in. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the Gsmc Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the Gsmc Financial News Podcast.
Back, and again today we're talking about the startup space. What is it? What type of startups are deemed to be a little bit more successful than others? How you can do your own startup, or how you might be able to teach others to do startups. There's a few brands out there who do that. That's a startup within itself. A startup who teaches other startups how to start up, right? As funny as that might sound, that's literally a niche. So I love to tell those who I help in business, it doesn't matter what you want to do. There is a market for it. And it really depends on how you present yourself to that market. If you come in the market like you know everything, chances are you'll fail. If you come into the market a little stuck up, chances are you'll fail, because startup spaces, you need a team. You need people. People survive with other people. That's always my motto. And the startup business is the same way. You need other startups. You need other businesses to champion you. A lot of times when I'm getting some individuals started, I always ask them who their market is, who their network is, I should say, Who do they know in business? Who do you see as your competition? I need to see the business through your eyes so that I can help you see the future and we can help see the impact of what's going to happen with this startup. Again, I'm a very, very small integral piece to the startup space, right? I'm literally helping you get started and move to a place of production where you have sales coming in now. And then from there, I release my hands and, you do your thing. If you would like to keep me on, that's what you can do. That's what I do in the space. So again, that's even a market in itself. I'm not the only one. I have some unofficial mentors who I pay attention to. I love the way they do business as well. And that's what it's all about. In startups, you have to look around you. See who's doing what. Research. I harp on research because people don't like to research. We have so much technology and so much information at the palm of our hands that it's overwhelming. And I feel like the more information we get, the less informed people are. So it's our jobs as business owners, as business champions, those of us who just support small business or support big business. It's up to us to really keep the knowledge going in this field. And that happens through you being in the field. That happens with you being a part of the space. So, obviously, if you're tuned into the Business News Podcast, I'm sure you are a part of the business space in some way, or you're looking to get involved. So this might be the area for you. You might want to help startups get started, right? So let's get into the types of startups. There are about 6 different types, and the first one we'll talk about is lifestyle startups. So lifestyle startups usually are made up of passionate, freelance coders, developers. They work for themselves. So instead of working for anyone else, they choose to love their work, to love themselves. They don't wake up choosing violence, going to some 9-to-5s. Going to some 9-to-5s is choosing violence, in my opinion. I admire the lifestyle startups. I think if I had the financial backing, I would definitely go for it. Those individuals who I've helped in that type of startup, they just seem so peaceful, right? They just wake up and they just go about their day as they go about their day. And, it's like, it's easy breezy and beautiful. I know it's not all easy breezy, but it seems very peaceful that you have a type of skill set and you're able to, do web developing. You can create websites. Everyone needs a website. Websites are also pretty expensive depending on how much is going into that website. I know some people who flip websites. That's another niche. It's crazy, right? So many different things you can do. And those lifestyle type startups, we're talking about our self-employed. They might be a freelance writer. They might be a ghostwriter. That would be an example of a freelance writer. And, you just kind of write what you write and people hop on if they hop on, and if they don't, you just go and sell it to someone else. There are different websites that you can be a part of, some different online communities where they kind of help you filter out and see who's in need of a freelance writer, who's in need of a website builder, who's in need of IT help. You might be a freelance IT guy or gal out there, and you can join these different communities and you can get started that way. Another type of startup is the large companies. Right, so remember I gave you the example of Disney doing Disney Plus. Disney Plus is a startup. It's already a pretty big startup. At least it is in my eyes. I have an account. I watch Lion King. Lion King is my favorite Disney movie. I think I will put Jungle Book second. Yes. We'll say yes. All right. Final answer. Side note, but I love The Lion King. It's a lot of lessons in there. I think it's great. So that Disney Plus is definitely an example of a large company that's a startup. These large companies are usually very, very profitable to the environment. But they're very susceptible as well, because sometimes you could be a big company and start another brand and it just doesn't hit the same, because people are like, we kind of like what it was before, we don't want to see you in a new form. We like you the way that you are, and we want to keep it that way. You'll see that oftentimes with clothing, they might try to revamp how they look, and people are like, we like the jeans how basic they were before. We don't really want anything new. There was one example, one of my favorite stores, I want to say it was Kicks. I used to go to Kicks all the time. They just always had little, it was almost like a Marshall's in my opinion. You might find something similar at a different store, but chances are you won't. So I used to love Kicks a lot. I'm not a big shopper, so I used to like finding things that caught my eye. If I'm going to shop in the store, I need to have fun. So Kicks was pretty good for me. It was always something different, something new. And they always had some of the basics that I always needed. Then Kicks, they switched ownership, and now it is ran by a different brand. So the logo is different, the name is different, and I'm not a fan. And some people around me are not a fan. That's an example of a large company who may not be able to really keep up in the same space because they've either changed themselves or they started something brand new. They've either sold and created something new. There's different ways that you can create a new large company. And I can tell you the shop, at least in my neighborhood, the store is not as busy as Kicks was. I think it's just because it's just different and it's not the same, and we know it's an extension of the original store, but it just doesn't feel the same, right? That's an example of being susceptible to your environment. Things change, and you as a business depend on customers, right? So I'll be interested. I'm going to do some research and see how the store is faring now that it's under a new name with a new logo and just some different items that people dress depending on the city you're in. Different cities dress differently if you've paid attention to the fashion industry. And some things the city just doesn't vibe with, So I'm interested to see how that brand is doing. So I'll come back to that one in the future. I'll give you an update. All right. Another idea of a large company startup would be like your Google. Google, people thought it was a dumb name. What is a Google? I've never even heard of a Google. I love brands like that. I love startups that have a silly name because it sticks so well. It works every time, right? Then you have something like Android. So a lot of people didn't have Androids in the beginning. I was never a fan of the little green guy. I'm definitely Team Apple, so that's why I'm throwing a little shade. I'm definitely Team Apple. The green guy, he wasn't my favorite. But they were so creative in how they marketed and how they took shots at the big guy. At the time, Apple was the big guy and Android was constantly taking shots. And so they created this team atmosphere. Are you Team iPhone or are you Team Apple or are you Team Android? And from there, the innovation started. It's competition in tech, right? That's when we started, in my generation, I would say, we started to see the big competition. Like in my family, there are some siblings who I'll choose not to name, who are just Team Android all day. They don't care what I have to say. They just don't care. It's us or no one. And they will not change phones. Everyone, at this point, almost everyone has an iPhone. So it would just make sense if they would get one. It's just not going to happen, right? Because Android made it a team. They rallied around their customers. That's very good. It's very innovative, and I loved it. I loved the little competition. Obviously, both phones have their pluses and their minuses. That's just technology. But it's nice to see how these brands were creative enough to take shots at the big guy and find their fit in the market. And they're doing very, very well. There's hundreds of brands of Androids, right? So that's an example of a large company. Then you have your buyable startups. These are the ones who, they found a unique idea. They developed something new and innovative. It gets acquired, then it hits market, and then it gets, it gets out there to the public, or it's already on the market, and they're still in that seed phase, so they're still in the beginning, like most brands are. That seed phase, that's normally when everyone's paying attention to you, right? Everyone's trying to see if you're going to win or if you're going to lose. So that's the time where some people, the purpose of getting the brand started is so that it can get flipped. Well, it's almost like house flipping. I am similar in that way. I love the idea of flipping businesses. Let's get it started, let's get it going, let's get it tweaked, and then let's sell it. And then let's do it all over again. I think that's a very fun niche in the market. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It's a lot of stress in that market as well, because if it's not deemed scalable, who's going to buy it? So that's just something that you want to keep in mind. And then there are your social startups. So the driving force behind those kind of startups is the idea and the feelings and the mission and the vision and the community, right? So the social startups, their whole purpose is not to make money. The real purpose is to change the world. That's really the purpose. Now, granted, everything we do, I would say, is about making money, right? People have family to feed, they have bills to pay, and they have trips to go on, right? We're coming into the summer months. People are trying to socially distance and chill, right? We're trying to have a good time. So if you're starting a business, the goal is to make a profit. However, in the social startup space, that is not the number one goal. The number one goal is not to make revenue. I don't think the goal should ever be to make revenue. I don't think that should be the number one goal, except for if you're in the buyable startup space. If you're in the buyable startup space, yes, you need to make money. So you need to make sure you scale that business correctly so that it can be bought. That is the goal. Other than that, your goal should not be to make money. You will get burned out, because it'll never be enough, right? So with the social startups, these are about the impact on the community and how they can change the world and different things of that nature. So I really like the social startups. I feel like if I had the time, I would really, really do that. I love helping other people. I'm not in that space right now, but maybe one day. I say that often. Maybe one day I'll be able to get in that social startup space. You're looking at normally your nonprofits. I would give those the social startup. Because again, they want to change the landscape of the world. They want to change the world. They want to save the world. Charity water is an example. There's a few other examples, but those are some of the ones. That's one of the examples that I saw. And then you have your other two. They're a little different. You have your internal startups and then what's called a unicorn startup. Internal startups are literally internal. They start at a company, and from there they build this brand. For example, some companies start a podcast, and their podcast is their media startup, and from there they get donations and investors and things of that nature. And then you have the unicorn startup. If a startup is well established in the market, or it has a big chunk of the market, it's worth around $1 billion. Again, that's considered a unicorn, because that does not normally happen, where you hit the gates running at $1 billion. Right? So that's considered the unicorn. Something different and something that we're not sure is even real, right? That's your unicorn startup. So again, we just ran through a few different types. You have your lifestyle, you have your scalables, you have, your large companies, you have your buyable startups, social startups, which is one of my favorites. You have your unicorns, because we're not sure if this is even possible. And then you have your internal startups that start within the company, right? So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get into the specific details of how to start a startup. So again, in previous episodes, we talked about specific markets. But this time, we're going to give more of a general understanding of how to get a business started in the startup space. And then after that, we'll get into our hometown heroes. So stay locked in. We'll be right back.
Do you work in the world of marketing and advertising? Are you a media buyer or the owner of an agency? Have you been looking for a podcast to help stay on top of all the goings on of those worlds? The Gsmc Marketing News Podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning marketing and advertising. Get the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. The Gsmc Marketing News Podcast has you covered, whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand.
and today we're talking about the startup space. What is the startup space, how it got started, or when we can remember some examples of the startup space and when it really got big. Now it is a global type of market. So we gave the example of some automobiles who were looking to get started back in the early 1900s, and no one believed in them. Everyone, well, not no one. Certain people, certain investors believed in them, and I'm sure they're eating very well because of that belief. A lot of times, startups are seen as, that might not last, because we know the statistics on business and how many businesses fail. However, we know how many businesses succeed, and we can look around us and see successful businesses every day, right? So, the startup is a very fickle business. You never know who really needs what you're selling. You want to look into certain types of startup, ways to do business. So you have, your unicorn startups, you have your social startups, you have your large company startups, your social startups, lifestyle startups, I should say, things of that nature. It's just different segments within the market that you can hop into. And then there are specific types of startups who are just seen as more successful. So you have, some profit margins who are just seeing the high end, which is normally your professional, scientific, IT type businesses. Then you go into healthcare, then you have manufacturing, you have food, service, and leisure activities like your resorts, for example. And then you have retail. So those are some of the most profitable sectors. But some profitable businesses could be, for example, we'll give a few examples. You have like your accounting, your tax prep. There is a few in my city, a few different tax preps in my city. You just want to make sure that they're licensed, they have all the right information, because no one wants to play with IRS. I used to work for the government at one point, and one thing all the agencies could laugh about in some way was that the IRS is, I would say, one of the most serious agencies that we have. They will not come today. They may not come tomorrow, but in 10 years, maybe 15 years, we've seen some businesses and some lifestyle entrepreneurs who have run into bad problems with the IRS, all because of their tax work not being done properly, their tax forms and their balance sheets, and there's missing information. So you want to make sure those guys are credible and that they're doing everything that needs to be done to keep the books right. All right, so that's one type. You have your capital investments, you have your education, you have legal services. So you might be business law, bankruptcy law, family law, criminal law. That's another area that sees a lot of funding. There's a lot of education that goes into it. And, that bar exam can be lethal from what I hear. So good luck. That's definitely something you might want to pay attention to. You have your outpatient clinics. Remember the healthcare. So outpatient clinics, they normally provide, medical services, testings, treatments, small surgical procedures, no overnight serious hospital things. But that is, when they're held privately, they see, lots of money coming in, right? Because they're dealing with insurance companies. But to get it started, you definitely need some investors. So pay attention to that. You have your property managers and those who go around appraising properties. That's a pretty good field. The dentist. I have a local dentist, and I absolutely love my dentist, right? My insurance takes that. My insurance, the dentist takes my insurance there. They cover most of my procedures. They're not very expensive, but they do quality work. They give you treatment plans. It's so great how they're so in tune with their community. So that might be something that you're interested in. If you're a dentist, you might be interested in getting into private practice. Then you have your real estate. You have a lot of other healthcare practitioners. You might have mental health or a therapist. You might have a physical therapist, a speech therapist. I know a young man who needed a speech therapist, and that speech therapist was pretty expensive, but the work she did was priceless. So that's definitely a niche out there. Your management, your business management, IT, finance, marketing, advertising, things of that nature. That's a pretty good business. Everyone always needs someone to tell their story. So if you're getting into, advertising and marketing, everyone is always in need of someone to tell the story properly to engage their consumers. So that's definitely something you want to keep in mind. Then you have your logistics, like your warehouses and your storehouses, things like that. When I say that, I'm talking like your Amazon hubs, your UPS hubs, your FedEx hubs, your local carriers. I know a few local carriers. Shout out to Philly Express. He does an amazing job getting packages around the city and the surrounding counties. So those are just some profitable types of small businesses that you can take a look at. Just to see if you see anything that sparks your interest, anything that you're already good at that you think you would be better as a business owner with that skill set as opposed to just working for someone else. So that's something to consider. So let's get into, okay, we've gone through the different types of startups that there are. We understand what a startup is. We've looked at some of the most profitable startup sectors. Now you're ready to start. You figured out what you wanted to do, and now you're ready to get the ball rolling. So I'm going to give some tips that apply to all markets. Now, specifically for your market, for your niche, what you're doing, you want to look into, for example, starting licensing. That will be specific to your market. Getting things incorporated, that would be specific to the state you're in, right? So those are the more so specific things. We're going to get into just some general details, right? So I would say the first thing is, again, like we spoke on earlier, is understanding that this is not easy. Starting up a business can be very, very difficult. There's many roadblocks. There's financial strain. Your family has to, if you have a family like I do, they have to be on one accord, understanding that this is what I'm planning to do. Are you good with this? In some instances, some people just do what they want. But I think to have more success, you want to make sure your family's on one accord. For example, I'm in business. I've always been in business. I knew what I wanted to do in high school. I was in the business community in high school. I had a knack for public relations. I thought it was pretty fun. And then I got to college and did public relations and learned about marketing and the communications field. And then I went to grad school and dived much, much deeper into business concepts and things that were, that I was just unaware of until you get that formal training, I would say. So you don't have to go to school for it, per se, but I prefer to learn from experts. So, going to school worked for me. And, talking about grad school with my spouse, that was a very serious conversation because, can I afford it? What type of strain will that put on the family? And now that I'm fully out of school, I've been doing, some entrepreneurship things in between. And my wife is very understanding. She's also into entrepreneurship as well. Right now she is fully in the field at this point. I remember at one point she wasn't even sure she would get into business in that way. She liked working in the corporate setting. And then life happens and she went full out entrepreneurship and she's killing the game right now. So that was something that we had to talk about though. Is she going to be able to do that? Are we going to be able to sustain our expenses? Things like that. Those are very, very serious conversations that you have to have. So understand that this is not just about you once you get started in a business if you have a family. Now, if you're single and your kids are grown at this point, and you're looking for something to do, or this is something that you've always wanted to do, and you just go for it, more power to you. I just say if you have family, consider your family, because it's going to be some long nights and some early mornings, and, it's just, time is of the essence, right? Time is one of our biggest commodities. So be sure that you're aware of that. I've seen some families go through it because they just weren't understanding of the depth of what entrepreneurship and startup and business is all about. This is a time-consuming field, so just be mindful. I harped on that because I want you to be very, very mindful of that. You need your family support. It helps business go along much smoother. All right, so understand the challenges of that. Finding investors, finding, those who are going to invest in the brand. Are you going to start it? Are you going to invest yourself? Things of that nature need to be discussed. And then, obviously, you always want to protect yourself. We have car insurance, life insurance, health insurance, home insurance, renter's insurance, business insurance. That's what you want to get. You want to get the business insurance. You want to get the your corporation or LLC or partnership. You want to get it legalized. You want to have, your Inc. or Corp. If that's what you're using, and understand when you do set up an LLC, you don't necessarily have to promote it as X brand LLC, but that is on your paperwork. You definitely want to have that in order. Many business owners mistake that they can just use an LLC and file their certificate of incorporation, and that's it. To lessen the likelihood of personal shareholder liability, you want to, I would say, use a company name. The file, look at some of the businesses around you. And I'm saying, actually research. Don't go off of their Instagram or just the simple articles you can find on Google. For me, I like to, especially when I'm helping businesses, I have to help them, with their name, because everyone has a beautiful name until they realize someone else had that name and it's already taken, trademark, patent, everything is legalized for that brand, and now we have to start over and find something else. So I am constantly seeing how other businesses are running their operations and how they name themselves. And their name is very important. It's what's going to last. So you want to avoid hard to spell names. I know you love, you might love your niece to bits and pieces, but if her name is difficult to pronounce, you might want to find a better way to spell it. If you're dead set on a specific name, just find a better way to spell it so that's just a little bit easier for the public to take it in. Do a complete and thorough search of that name. You want to look up your state in the federal data bank for different names that are incorporated and things of that nature, to make sure your name is good, so that when you go to do your domain, you have a .com. You want to have xbrand.com, at xbrand on Instagram, the xbrand on Facebook, xbrand tweets on Twitter, everything xbrand@gmail.com. You want everything to flow so customers begin to know, because your business, customers not so much. So you want to make sure that you're helping them to have an ease of search when they're looking for you. And don't take forever to launch. Focus on building a great brand, but please don't take too long to launch it. There's one girl I know who was a cook, and she took forever to start her business. And at this point, people are kind of they're over the hype of how good her food was, and there's other startup brands as well. So now she's getting into a saturated market. I think she's still doing pretty well, but I know she could have done better if she would have just hopped out there when the fire was hot, right? And then I would say perfect your elevator pitch. So now you have your business going, you have your brand going, and everyone knows who you are, and now you're looking for more funding, right? You've hit this ceiling. You need more funding. Work on that elevator pitch. It needs to be something quick, to the point, states exactly what your brand does, what it stands for, and how the customer can benefit. All right. So those are just a few little steps. Again, this is just a brief in general how to get your business started. And don't forget, I would say the bonus would be, don't forget your customers. Customers need to know that they are loved and appreciated. So that's definitely something, that community, that morale, right? Keep that going. So we're going to take a quick break right now, and then when we come back, we're going to get into my favorite portion of the show, Hometown Heroes. All right, stay locked in. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Back, and again today we're talking about the startup space. What is the startup space? The startup space is normally for those type of entrepreneurs or business owners who are looking to make big impact, who are looking to change the world in some way, who are looking just for some freedom, some financial freedom, some time freedom. They don't want to be confined to a desk. I don't think any human wants to be confined to a desk. That's just something that we got to do sometimes, right? So those of us who don't want to be confined to the desk normally tend to go towards entrepreneurship. I think you do have to love to work. So I would say now that I'm in entrepreneurship, I'm more confined to a desk than I ever was. I'm thankful for the technology that we have. I can come and go, but I'm still tied to this laptop. Me and my laptop, we go everywhere together. And I have my phone, my notebook. I'm always in business mode. And sometimes, my wife has to tell me to turn it off. Let's just go out and let's have fun and let's not talk about anything, right? Because she's in entrepreneurship too. So you want to have that balance. So being in business, it can definitely be time consuming. And there's also different types of startups. There's the unicorn startups. Those are the ones I think we're all aspiring for. You can come out the gate with billions of dollars in revenue, right? So there's a different few ways you can play the field. You can be on the end that I'm on, where I just help, fresh business owners get their paperwork started, get different things intact, and get business operations rolling. Or you could be at the part where you're the investor or looking to buy scalable businesses, or, you could just be one of our champions. I like to call the consumers or the customers the champions. Those are the ones who are the word of mouth. They believe in the brand. They believe in what you do. They're going to tell everyone about it. They're going to comment under every post that you post. They're going to share every post. They're going to like everything. So there's different ways that you can be involved. You might even want to, that's an idea. You might want to consider being, the customer hub. And that's where, customers basically like a forum like you see with Yelp. You might want to create that. That also helps in the startup. It might just be specifically for startups, how these brands like it. How these customers like it and their opinions and things of that nature. There might be something to get into. It's different ways you can get involved with startups. Think of any type of brand, it can become a startup. I guarantee you. There is, we discussed in the last episode, one startup in Italy. That's where the socks are made, is luxury socks. And some of the socks are very expensive for me. For socks, I don't want to spend more than like $20 on a pack. If I can find them for $10 a pack, I would. But sometimes the cheaper socks feel cheap, right? So those luxury socks, I'm sure they feel amazing. I may have to break down. I can be a little frugal. I may have to break down. Go get a pair of those Italian handcrafted socks, right? Tie-dye, all kinds of stuff. So there's a market for everything. So don't feel discouraged. Don't think your idea is too big. I think the bigger the idea, the more you should try and push it. entrepreneurship and business is what that's all about. Something new, innovative. You might reinvent the wheel. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you want to take an old concept and make it new. Example, we gave the bottle top example for certain condiments, the no-slip caps, so that when you're squirting your ketchup or your mayonnaise or your mustard, it's not getting all over the top. You know how that can get. I remember when I was little, you always had to clean off the tops of the ketchup because it would get crusty. Well, there's a no-slip cap, and you don't even have to worry about it. That's something innovative that I'm sure no one really was thinking this is something scalable that will make money, but there's a market for it. So that's what the startup space is all about, finding your market and going for it. And if it fails, and start over. That's the one thing I love about business. If it doesn't work, scratch it, try something else, right? So let's get into some hometown heroes. Who are those guys who are like, you know what? I think what I'm doing can work. I think what I'm doing can change the world in some way. Even if one person is affected by the change in a positive light, I've done my job. So I love hometown heroes. It really gets to highlight them. All right, so let's hop right into it. The first one I want to highlight, I believe I discussed them briefly before. It's Loop Insurance. It's based in Texas, and one of the founders is John Henry. He's like a serial entrepreneur. I absolutely love his work. I think what he does is amazing. He's really focused on community. He's really focused on his employees, and he's not so much money hungry. You know, I believe he just made a post the other day that he took a serious pay cut. I'm talking over 50% type of pay cut to get things started, to get things rolling. So for him, again, it's not about the money, and I think that's one of the greatest things about startup businesses. It's not about the money per se. Obviously, we want to eat good. We want to be able to take care of our family. You know, everyone wants to make sure their mom and dad is straight, right? Make sure their grandma, their siblings, things of that nature. So I understand the passion behind the profits that can be made from business. But I love individuals like this who understand that profit is to be made, love profits being made, but just understands that the business needs are more important. So shout out to Loop Insurance. They're just taking a different spin on auto insurance. So they want to make it so that it's fair. A lot of times you're paying for things that, you know, you just probably don't need to pay for. I know with me, I cannot stand paying my car insurance. I pay it every month because I have to. But I can't stand it. To me, it's very pricey for the driving that I do. Knock on wood, I have not gotten into an accident ever in life. So the fact that I still pay, you know, average insurance, to me, it probably could be less. I think my driving record and my skills, it could be a little bit less. Now, there are ways that I can get it to be lower, but I just feel like they're a little intrusive. And I'm not really a big fan of too much technology in the car at one time. So for me, I'm just trying to figure out an alternative. So Loop might be the alternative. Not sure if they're, you know, we'll see what happens, because normally in startups, what ends up happening is you have a great entrepreneur or a great hometown hero who gets something started, and then it dominoes, and then the bigger brands are able to come in and kind of enhance what was already started. So I think there's going to be a big market in auto insurance and just insurance in general. In general, I think it's going to be a big change in that. So what they're doing at Loop is a public benefit corporation. They leverage AI technology, telematics, and big data to create a better priced insurance product. Right, so that's the goal. And right now they're getting ready to launch. I know there is a sign-up sheet. I think they have hit their target goal of the number of signups that they wanted to have. It's an automated system that you can use. So if you go onto the site, there's going to be an automated chat box. And again, you can join the waiting list right now. There's a few individuals on the team. So again, it's John Henry. He's the one that I found out about the brand through. And then his co-founder and co-CEO, Carrie Ann Nadeau. So they're in this together. And then they have some other individuals on the board. their CTO and their head of insurance, and they're also looking to fulfill some careers. There's the product pricing and compliance specialist. They have a software engineer, front-end web developer, data analyst, data scientist. So they're looking to fulfill the unemployment needs in the country. They're looking to fulfill better and fair priced insurance in the company. So shout out to John Henry and Loop. I think what they're doing is awesome. Looking forward to seeing how that pans out for them. All right. And then the next group I wanted to talk about is Squad Locker. So obviously, if you've heard me talk, I always love sports. I used to play sports. I'm a big fan of everything athletic, right? So I'm constantly keeping my eye out for new things, and different ways that some businesses attack needs that are in their market. And there's what's called the Squad Locker. Squad Locker was founded in 2011. And I want to say they were started in Rhode Island. And what they do is they're just basically disrupting the athletic apparel market, right? There's so many athletic apparel companies. You could just type in athletic apparel into your Google or Yahoo or Bing search, and there will be hundreds of pages and brands and businesses that specialize in that. What I like about Squad Locker is that they provide a different type of online tools, pretty innovative in my opinion, for the coaches and league administrators to manage apparel. So you have a lot of sports, especially with certain schools. They might have multiple athletic type of sports that they can play within their department. And, they have to manage uniforms for in some cases, thousands of students. So because of that, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So what Squad Locker did, they leveraged their artificial intelligence, and they provide brands such as Under Armour, Nike, and Adidas for an online, easy self-service experience. It's easy to launch, and it's free for youth athletic programs, which I thought was amazing. So you can get, your uniform kits and the team gear for your youth sports organizations, schools, whether it be high school or college, and you can also go ahead and order some things on your own, if you want to partner with them, or you want to partner with a company, then you can go there and you can kind of find the best ways to get it made. There's different, again, they help with Adidas. I know there's Champion. There's a few other brands that they work with, and you can pick the brand of your choice. And from there, you can get your stuff done, your uniforms. And again, you can have embroidery, there's printings, all kinds of things. So I thought what Squad Locker was doing is pretty cool. Again, they're out of Rhode Island. And then we have John Henry and Loop out of that's based in Texas. So shout out to those startups. I think what they're doing is pretty great. They're definitely making some buzz. So if I were you, I would go check them out just to see, if you're interested. You might have a better idea. You might be having a similar idea and you didn't know that they existed. I would go check them out, kind of study the market, right? So again, today we talked about the startup space. We went into the history of startups. We talked about the different kinds of startup sectors that you can be a part of, some profitable startup areas, how you can start your startup, and then we just got into some hometown heroes. So thank you so much for listening to the Gsmc Business News Podcast, brought to you by the Gsmc Podcast Network. I would just like to, again, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. We're constantly talking about news, business updates, different things that's trending, just letting you know which episodes are coming up, some things that we find interesting that we may have already discussed that's going on in the news, in the business world. So thank you. Make sure you like and subscribe and, leave some stars, leave some reviews. Let us know how you feel in the podcast. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
You've been listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type GSMC into your favorite podcast app to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.